The strange case of Thomas Messick. On the 15th of November, 2015, 82-year-old Thomas Messick Sr. vanished without a trace during what was meant to be an ordinary hunting trip in the vast wilderness of the Adirondack Mountains in upstate New York. The retired Air Force veteran, father, and grandfather had gone into the woods near Lily Pond in the Lake George Wild Forest with a group of family and friends, something he had done countless times before. Yet that day became one of the most perplexing mysteries ever to unfold in the region, one that remains unsolved to this very day. Thomas was part of a group of seasoned hunters who divided into teams for a drive, a common hunting method designed to guide deer towards stationary shooters. The older members of the group, including Thomas, stayed in position along a line, each man less than 100 yards apart. The younger hunters moved through the nearby forest, hoping to push any game toward the stationary line. The setup was routine, the conditions calm, and every member of the group carried a functioning walkie-talkie for communication. Thomas, known for being reliable and cautious, took his position only a few hundred yards from the parking area where their vehicles were stationed. When the younger hunters finished their sweep, they regrouped, but Thomas was gone. His radio remained silent the entire time, and despite repeated calls over the walkie-talkies, there was no answer. At first, the men assumed he had simply wandered slightly off course or followed a deer trail. They fired shots into the air and called his name repeatedly, hoping he would signal back. When darkness fell and there was still no sign of him, they began to worry. They stayed near their vehicles through the night, honking the truck horn and shouting into the woods, praying that he would emerge from the darkness. By the following morning, local authorities were alerted, and a massive search effort began. Over 300 people participated in the operation, including forest rangers, state police, volunteer search and rescue teams, and even the Air National Guard. Helicopters scanned from above, while divers searched nearby bodies of water. Specially trained dogs combed the forest floor, and infrared cameras were used to detect any signs of body heat. The area was carefully mapped into grids using bump lines, lengths of string tied between trees to ensure no part of the terrain was missed. Despite the intensity of the search and the experience of the teams involved, not a single trace of Thomas was ever found. Not his rifle, not his clothing, not even a footprint. As the weeks turned into months, the official search was scaled back. By January of 2016, after combing more than 5 square miles of rugged terrain, authorities reluctantly suspended the active search. Still, periodic searches continued in the years that followed, each one ending in frustration. For Thomas's family, the lack of any evidence was agonizing. He was elderly, missing one eye, used hearing aids, and had heart problems, conditions that would make it difficult for him to travel far from where he was last seen. If he had experienced a medical emergency, logic suggested he should have been found near his assigned location. Yet the woods gave up no sign of him. Adding to the mystery was the unexpected involvement of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Typically, the FBI does not participate in missing person cases unless there is a federal element or a suspected crime that crosses state lines. But in this instance, agents arrived on scene early in the investigation. When questioned, they offered little explanation. Thomas's wife, Beverly, later said that federal agents told her something isn't right about this case, but declined to elaborate further. Their continued presence only deepened speculation that there might be more to Thomas's disappearance than anyone realized. One of Thomas's longtime friends, who was also part of the hunting group that day, later shared a detail that added another layer of unease. While sitting quietly in his position, he heard a strange sound echoing through the forest. He described it as a loud, sharp crack or snapping noise, unlike anything he had ever heard in the woods before. The sound seemed to come from up on a nearby hill, roughly 150 yards from his spot, not directly where Thomas had been stationed. He mentioned the sound to the authorities, but without physical evidence, there was little they could make of it. Still, the noise stuck in his memory, something unnatural that seemed to precede Thomas's disappearance. Many who are familiar with the case have wondered how an experienced outdoorsman could vanish in an area so close to the road in such a short span of time, leaving no trace behind. Thomas's rifle, walkie-talkie, and clothing should have been easy to locate. Even if he had fallen or become disoriented, the search dogs should have picked up his scent. The fact that nothing was ever found has led to numerous theories, some suggesting a sudden health emergency, others pointing towards something far stranger. Nearly a decade later, the disappearance of Thomas Messick remains one of the most baffling mysteries in the Adirondacks. The mystery of Amber Lynn Wild. Amber Lynn Wild's disappearance remains one of Wisconsin's most haunting mysteries, a case that has lingered for more than 2 decades without resolution. Born on the 26th of March 1979 in Campbellsport, Wisconsin, Amber was a bright, determined woman with dreams of becoming a pediatrician. Her family and friends described her as kind, ambitious, and full of life. After completing an associate's degree in just 1 year at a community college, she transferred to the University of Wisconsin at Green Bay in September of 1998, only 3 weeks before she vanished. She had earned a full scholarship, a testament to her hard work and academic excellence. Amber's future seemed full of promise. She was also 4.5 months pregnant and looking forward to motherhood. Her aunt had even offered to help care for the baby, so Amber could continue her studies. On the evening of the 23rd of September, 1998, Amber called her father, Steve Wild, to tell him that she had been in a minor car accident. She had rear-ended another vehicle, but was not seriously hurt. She explained that she had struck her head on the windshield and had a mild headache. Medical staff at her university advised her that it was likely a concussion and that she should be monitored throughout the day. Steve spoke to his daughter later that night, unaware that it would be their final conversation. The following day, Amber was scheduled to attend a class at 1 o'clock in the afternoon and later had an eye doctor's appointment. Her father tried calling her multiple times to wake her, but she never answered the phone. When she failed to appear at either her class or her appointment, Steve grew concerned. Missing appointments was completely out of character for Amber. He drove 1.5 hours from Mayville to Green Bay, only to find her apartment locked and her car missing. Realizing something was terribly wrong, he immediately reported her missing. A week later, on the 30th of September, her car, a dark grey 1988 Subaru GL, was discovered abandoned in the parking lot of the 50-yard line sports bar and Roadstar Inn near Lombardi Access Road. The location was not far from Lambeau Field. Her purse and cell phone were locked in the trunk, exactly where she usually kept them, and the car keys were still in the ignition. Strangely, the driver's seat had been pushed far back, suggesting someone much taller than Amber had driven the car last. Authorities also discovered something even more unsettling. The vehicle had been driven roughly 600 unexplained miles since it had last been serviced. Many investigators believe the car had not been parked in that lot for the entire week she had been missing. In 2016, unsealed court documents revealed chilling new information. Entries from Amber's diary, which she kept faithfully, pointed to a potential motive and a prime suspect, Matthew John Schneider, the man believed to be the father of Amber's unborn child. According to the documents, Amber had met Matthew at a party earlier that year, in May. He was engaged to another woman at the time, and when Amber told him about her pregnancy, he reacted with anger and denial. She later told her aunt that Matthew had pressured her to end the pregnancy, but she refused. About a month before she vanished, Amber had informed both Matthew's fiancée and his mother about the pregnancy. According to Amber's diary, Matthew was furious that his secret had been exposed. In the weeks leading up to her disappearance, Amber wrote that Matthew had become increasingly aggressive and desperate. He had threatened her, saying he would harm himself if she did not end the pregnancy, and had also warned her that she would never see the baby if she didn't comply with his wishes. Despite these alarming threats, Amber continued to attend classes and maintain her routine, determined to focus on her studies and her future as a mother. When questioned by police, Matthew claimed he barely knew Amber and had only spoken to her a few times at a coffee shop. However, his phone records told a very different story. He and Amber had been in frequent contact up until the night she disappeared. Detectives learned that Amber and Matthew had been seeing each other for approximately 4 months, and despite his public denials, many believe he was the father of her unborn child. Matthew's behavior after Amber's disappearance raised further suspicions. He never attempted to contact her again and refused to take a polygraph test. One of his friends later told police that Matthew had confessed to feeling guilty about his relationship with Amber. Investigators also noted his lack of concern for her well-being, despite knowing she was missing. Authorities have long theorized that Amber may have met with foul circumstances shortly after her last phone call. A prevailing theory is that she was hidden somewhere near Highway 29, which was under construction at the time and where Matthew worked as a highway laborer. Search teams, accompanied by Amber's family, have repeatedly combed the area, even digging along certain sections of the road, but no trace of her or her unborn child has ever been found. Over the years, multiple agencies have contributed to the investigation, including the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit, yet the case remains unsolved. Amber's bank accounts, credit cards, and social security number have remained untouched since September of 1998. Today, Amber would be 41 years old. Her family continues to hold on to hope that one day they will find answers. The mysterious case of Leah Rochelle Peebles. The mysterious disappearance of 23-year-old Leah Rochelle Peebles remains one of the most haunting unsolved cases in New Mexico's history. Leah was last seen in Albuquerque on the 22nd of May 2006 after going on a dinner date with a man she had recently met at the Flying Star Cafe, a popular and busy restaurant in the northeast area of the city. That evening, Leah seemed to be looking forward to new beginnings. She had just moved to Albuquerque from Fort Worth, Texas, with hopes of leaving behind a difficult past and building a brighter future. But that night would become the last time anyone would ever see her. Leah was born on the 16th of January, 1983, in Fort Worth, Texas, to parents Sharon McDowell and John Daniel Peebles. She grew up in a stable Christian home alongside her two brothers. Her childhood, however, was not without pain. As a young girl, Leah endured traumatic experiences that would shape the struggles she faced later in life. When she was a toddler, she was harmed by a distant relative, and when she reached 14 years of age, she suffered another attack at the hands of a family friend. Despite these early hardships, Leah was known as a bright and kind-hearted girl who poured her energy into school and creative activities. During her teenage years at Carter Riverside High School, Leah was a talented student and highly involved in school life. She was an honor student, a member of the cheerleading team, part of the yearbook staff, and active in the drama club. She was loved by her peers and known for her joyful personality. Yet beneath the surface, the emotional scars from her early experiences began to affect her deeply. By her sophomore year, Leah began to seek relief in unhealthy ways. She turned to alcohol and substances to numb the pain she carried, eventually withdrawing from her extracurricular activities and distancing herself from her once bright future. When she turned 18, Leah took a courageous step toward recovery by entering a faith-based rehabilitation program at Fort Worth Teen Challenge, a residential center dedicated to helping young women rebuild their lives. For nearly 2 years, she remained in the program, showing remarkable resilience and determination. During that time, she earned a cosmetology license and later began working at a local beauty salon. It seemed as though her life was moving in a positive direction again. However, recovery is a lifelong journey, and Leah experienced setbacks. She relapsed, leading to a few minor legal issues that resulted in short jail stays. Following her release, she tried to find stability again, though it proved difficult. In early May of 2006, Leah decided to make a bold change. She left Fort Worth and moved to Albuquerque, New Mexico, in hopes of starting fresh. Her plan was to distance herself from past influences and focus on healing. She found a place to stay with friends on Erba Street Northeast and had secured a new job at the Flying Star Cafe on Menul Boulevard Northeast, scheduled to begin the following week. For Leah, Albuquerque represented hope, a place where she could rediscover herself, free from the burdens that had followed her in Texas. On the evening of the 22nd of May, Leah told her friends she was going out for dinner with a man she had met at the cafe. She left around 8 o'clock in the evening and was last seen alive at the Flying Star Cafe, enjoying her meal. Later that night, she was involved in a minor traffic accident and took her silver 2000 Volkswagen Beetle to a nearby transmission shop. That particular area was known for nightlife and street activity. After leaving her vehicle there, Leah vanished without a trace. She never returned home, and her phone went silent. In the weeks that followed, her friends and family grew increasingly worried. Several weeks later, her vehicle was found abandoned, but Leah herself was nowhere to be found. The discovery deepened the mystery and raised troubling questions about what might have happened that night. Investigators pursued various leads, one of which involved reports of a woman known as Mia, who was said to have been working for a man identified only as AJ. This man allegedly provided her with substances in exchange for companionship. Authorities questioned this individual but were unable to find any evidence connecting him to Leah. Without witnesses or physical evidence, the case soon grew cold. Despite years of investigation, police found no clear indication of foul play, nor any proof of where Leah might have gone. Her disappearance left her family and community heartbroken. Her father, John Peebles, refused to give up hope. Over the years, he traveled across Texas, New Mexico, Colorado, Arizona, and Nevada, following every possible lead, searching for even the faintest clue about his daughter's fate. His determination and love became symbolic of a parent's unending devotion. Tragically, John lost his life in a motorcycle accident on the 5th of August, 2013, still unaware of what had become of Leah. The circumstances surrounding Leah's disappearance remain unclear. With no evidence of where she went, what happened to her, or why she never reached out again, her case continues to puzzle investigators. Some believe she may have fallen victim to dangerous circumstances that night in Albuquerque. Others hold out hope that she may still be alive, having chosen to start a new life elsewhere. Nearly 2 decades later, Leah's story continues to resonate. It is a painful reminder of how easily a life can slip into mystery, leaving behind unanswered questions and families searching for closure. The mystery of Joy D. Shields. In the mid-1980s, a young woman from Coos Bay, Oregon, vanished under circumstances that have left her story shrouded in mystery. Her name was Joy D. Shields, born sometime in either 1967 or 1968. She attended Marshfield High School, where those who knew her remembered her as bright and kind, always full of energy, and an excellent dancer. Had life taken its normal course, she would have graduated in 1987. Instead, her story was interrupted on the 30th of May, 1986, when she was last seen in her hometown of Coos Bay. Joy was described by friends as warm and welcoming, someone who made people laugh and feel included. One classmate recalled her as always super nice, fun to be around, and a talented dancer who enjoyed the music and social life of the era. Her personality left an impression, and decades later, those who went to school with her still remembered her smile and her kindness. The night of her disappearance began in an ordinary way, with Joy spending time at a local bar and club called Shanigan's. An acquaintance, who we will call Carol, later recounted that Joy had been there before she and another friend, Debbie, arrived. According to Carol, Joy left the club on her own just a few minutes before the two women entered. Later that same evening, Debbie received a startling phone call at the bar. Joy was on the other end of the line, speaking from a hotel payphone. She told Debbie she was in trouble, but hung up before giving further details. If accurate, this call marked the last time anyone heard her voice. Another woman, Beth, who was living with Joy and her family at the time, gave her own account of that evening. Beth remembered that Joy had come up to her before leaving the club and mentioned she was leaving with a man, even providing his name. Beth would later share this information with law enforcement, but according to her, the lead went nowhere and the man was never pursued further. Accounts of how Joy's disappearance was handled by her family vary widely. Her best friend at the time believed her family had shown little concern. This friend remembered calling Joy's parents repeatedly and even visiting their home, only to be met with a calm insistence that they had not heard from her. To this friend, it seemed as if no one in the family was worried. Yet another woman, who claimed to be close to Joy's sister, recalled a very different reality. She described the family as devastated, heartbroken, and determined to find her, suggesting they did indeed search and mourn deeply for their missing daughter and sister. Classmates and acquaintances reflected on the wider setting of Coos Bay itself, describing it as an isolated community where strange things often happened. Some believed that the town's character in the 1980s made it difficult for cases like Joy's to receive the attention they deserved. One classmate noted that Joy lacked the kind of family advocacy that often pushes police investigations forward, leaving her case at risk of fading into obscurity. Despite the inconsistencies in recollections, one fact remains constant. Joy D. Shields vanished on the 30th of May 1986, and she has never been found. Items of alleged evidence and reported sightings have not led to any resolution. No fruitful leads have surfaced over the decades, and her case has gradually slipped away from the public eye. Whether authorities continue to investigate today is uncertain. The story of Joy's disappearance is remembered not only because of its mystery, but also because of who she was. Friends described her as caring, vibrant, and deeply human, a young woman whose life was full of promise. Her disappearance left a void for those who knew her and cast a long shadow over the community she grew up in. The mystery of June Goodman. In 2003, 66-year-old June Goodman was living a quiet and content life in her ranch-style home at the end of a quarter-mile dirt road. A mother, grandmother, and great-grandmother, she was admired by her family, friends, and neighbors for her kindness, warm smile, and unwavering faith. Her eldest daughter, Donette, described her as a solid citizen whose greatest joys in life were her family and friends. June was also looking forward to retirement, often speaking with excitement about her plans for the future. On the day she vanished, June went grocery shopping, picking up 4 chocolate bars before driving home. The trip should have taken about 25 minutes. From what investigators could piece together, she arrived safely at her house, parked her van in its usual place, and settled into her recliner to watch television. The set was still on when she later went missing, suggesting that she had been relaxing when something occurred. The next morning, alarm bells rang when June did not show up for work. She had a reputation for punctuality, often arriving early with a cheerful smile. Calls to her home went unanswered, and a relative went to check on her. What they discovered was troubling. The sliding glass door to the backyard was left halfway open, the outdoor lights were still on, and her van remained parked outside. Even more concerning, her shoes were left behind, implying that she left the house either barefoot or in only socks. Authorities quickly ruled out robbery as a motive. Nothing inside the house was disturbed or taken, and valuables remained untouched. The home appeared as though June had simply vanished in the middle of an ordinary evening. Investigators reconstructed a timeline and theorized that she might have seen someone outside and opened a window to greet them. She may have stepped outside briefly and never returned. However, with no witnesses and no signs of forced entry, the circumstances remained unclear. Attention soon turned to 2 persons of interest. One was Patrick Michael Conn, a man who lived along June's mail route. The year before, June had a confrontation with him and later confided to others that she feared him. Conn allegedly threatened her at the post office after this dispute, but he was reportedly out of town when June disappeared, though the exact confirmation of his whereabouts was never firmly established. Another possible connection was a television repairman who had visited June's home the month before her disappearance. June had told relatives that he made her uneasy, describing him as behaving oddly when he returned her still-broken television. Investigators later noted cigarette butts outside her home, even though June herself never smoked. The repairman, however, was known to smoke, which raised additional concerns about his presence near her property. The most haunting aspect of the case is that June had no reason to walk away from her life. She was deeply tied to her family, had strong community roots, and was looking forward to her retirement. Friends and relatives insisted she would never leave without telling someone. Foul play is strongly suspected, though the precise details remain a mystery. The disappearance of June Goodman remains unsolved. Her family continues to live without closure, holding on to memories of a woman whose life was filled with warmth, optimism, and love. The unanswered questions surrounding her case serve as a chilling reminder of how even the most ordinary evening can be shattered, leaving behind silence and uncertainty where laughter and joy once lived. The mysterious case of how a genetics researcher suddenly vanished, then, 6 days later, his wife disappears. In September of 2000, the tranquil university town of Columbia, Missouri, became the setting for one of the most perplexing and unsettling missing persons cases in the state's history. Within a span of 6 days, 2 Chinese nationals, Yinzhou Zheng, a respected University of Missouri graduate student and genetics researcher, and his wife's son, vanished without a trace. Their disappearances not only shocked the local community, but also confounded investigators, raising suspicions, spawning conflicting theories, and leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions that remains unresolved more than 2 decades later. On September 17, 2000, Yinzhou's son, Charlie Zheng, a student at the University of Missouri, awoke to find his father missing from their University Terrace apartment. Yinzhou had planned to visit his daughter Jenny in Iowa City that day, but when Charlie reached out to Jenny, she said she was neither expecting him nor had he shown up. There were no signs of forced entry or struggle, and Yinzhou's passport and personal belongings, including his vehicle, were left behind. Initially, Charlie was not alarmed, noting that his father occasionally went on trips with friends. Sun, Yinzhou's wife, made no mention of his disappearance at the time. 6 days later, the situation became more ominous when Sun also vanished during the night, again leaving behind her passport and all personal effects. Sun was known in the community as a quiet, hard-working woman who waitressed at George's Pizza in Columbia. She did not drive and was often seen walking to local establishments like Taco Bell, where officers would occasionally offer her a ride home. Her employer, George Godas, recalled that Sun frequently came to work with visible bruises and injuries, which she rarely explained. According to several sources, Sun lived a difficult life at home. Jenny, Yinzhou's daughter from a previous relationship, said Sun resented having to care for Yinzhou's children who were not biologically hers. It was reported that Yinzhou forced her to work grueling hours and relinquish all of her earnings to him. At the time of their disappearances, both Yinzhou and Sun left behind their possessions, their bank accounts untouched, most notably Yinzhou's, which had over $30,000 in it, and even their daughter, who was just 5 years old. Curiously, Yinzhou had previously insisted that their daughter return to China to comfort his grieving mother after the passing of her husband, which some now see as a suspicious move made in anticipation of what was to come. The investigation by the Missouri University Police Department initially seemed routine. Charlie allowed them to search the family apartment, and he stated that the MUPD had taken his parents' passports. Strangely, the Missouri University Police Department refused to confirm whether they were in possession of the passports. Other inconsistencies began to emerge. The police department claimed to have issued a press release, yet no such release appeared in any of the local newspapers. When one newspaper requested a copy, the university declined to provide it, citing student privacy concerns. Fred Otto, the police chief at the time, described the investigation as thorough, claiming that state and federal agencies had been contacted. However, the Missouri State Highway Patrol and the FBI both later denied any involvement, stating there were no records of having been asked for assistance. Columbia police acknowledged offering support, but could not recall the extent of their involvement. The official stance from the Missouri University Police Department was that there was no suspicion of foul play in either disappearance. This conclusion has baffled many, given the unusual timing of both disappearances and the eerie calm that surrounded the circumstances. The fact that both Yinzhou and Sun disappeared within days of each other, leaving all their belongings behind, stretches the plausibility of a voluntary departure. Furthermore, Sun's boss flatly rejected the idea that she left of her own accord, stating she would never abandon her job or her daughter. Various theories have surfaced over the years. One posits that Sun, overwhelmed by years of hardship, may have taken out Yinzhou in a moment of desperation and then disappeared to avoid prosecution or as a result of retaliation. Others, including Sun's relatives, believe the opposite, that Yinzhou may have hurt Sun in an outburst. There are also theories suggesting that Yinzhou fled to avoid visa expiration issues, although his own mother doubted this explanation, given his confidence in his academic career and future. Despite the strange and suggestive details, no definitive answers have ever been found. Neither of them have been discovered, no forensic evidence has emerged, and no substantial leads have surfaced. Over 2 decades later, the case remains frozen in time, locked in bureaucratic silence and emotional agony for those who knew them. The couple's daughter was left orphaned and in the care of others, her future altered forever by a mystery that may never be solved. The disappearances of Yinzhou and Sun Zheng remain an open wound in Columbia's history, a case of 2 lives vanished, not only from sight, but seemingly from memory. Woman shares a mysterious video from her great-grandparents' house. A mysterious video recently shared online has sparked widespread interest and curiosity among those who investigate unexplained phenomena. The video, originally posted by a user named Alona Angelique, shows what appears to be an apparition briefly appearing beside a chair in a family living room. According to Alona, the chair in question belonged to her great-grandfather, a man who lived in the house until his passing. What makes this video even more compelling is the family history behind the home. It was built by Alona's great-grandfather and great-great-grandfather and has remained in the family ever since. In the post accompanying the video, Alona strongly denies any possibility that the footage was manipulated. She explains that her parents, who captured the video, are not technologically savvy and would not have the skills or the motivation to create a hoax. Furthermore, she emphasized that their home is well protected, equipped with an alarm system and a notoriously loud front door that would make any unauthorized entry highly noticeable. There were no signs of a break-in, and the property itself is located on a quiet peninsula, far removed from town and unlikely to attract random intruders. The footage was originally sent to Alona by her mother months earlier, and she had forgotten about it until recently joining a group dedicated to paranormal activity. Upon rediscovering the clip, she felt compelled to share it with the online community. The brief but striking moment caught on camera shows a translucent figure appearing beside the familiar chair, lingering just long enough for its form to be visible before vanishing from view. The resemblance to her great-grandfather, according to Alona, is unmistakable. What makes the case especially intriguing is not just the clarity of the figure, but also the emotional resonance it holds for the family. The home is not just a structure, it's a space built with love and inhabited by multiple generations. The appearance of a figure resembling the great-grandfather in such a personal, meaningful location has led many to suggest that this may be a visitation rather than a random haunting. Some believe that spirits can linger in places that held great emotional significance to them during their lives, and this sighting may be a reflection of that theory. Online responses to the video have been a mix of awe, curiosity, and skepticism. While some have suggested rational explanations such as reflections or camera malfunctions, others argue that the unique context and lack of any logical cause make this footage worthy of further attention. Whether viewed as a spiritual occurrence or simply an unexplained moment, the video has touched many who have watched it. Ultimately, the story behind this mysterious video adds another layer to the ongoing conversation about what lies beyond ordinary experience. For Alona and her family, it is more than just a clip. It is a potential moment of connection with a beloved family member whose presence may still linger in the home he helped build. The mystery of Boisdukan. In the early 1980s, the small Swedish town of Bua in Halland found itself at the center of a medical mystery that would baffle doctors, scientists, and residents alike. Known locally as Boisdukan, literally the Bua disease, this strange and sudden condition began spreading among school-aged children, particularly young girls between the ages of 12 and 13. The first cases were reported in 1982, and within 5 months, the mysterious affliction had spread to neighboring towns such as Vedige, Borås, and Mölndal. Then, just as quickly as it began, the outbreak vanished without explanation, leaving behind no trace but questions. The symptoms of Boisdukan were both specific and alarming. Children, particularly girls, began reporting pain in their hips, difficulty walking, and severely limited mobility. Some were hospitalized and subjected to traction treatments, a method involving pulleys and weights designed to rest and stretch the hip joints. Others used crutches to move about their schools, which quickly began to resemble hospital wards. Despite widespread concern, doctors could not identify any clear medical cause. Investigations included collaboration with the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention in the United States, but even advanced testing failed to turn up evidence of a virus or infection. Remarkably, the afflicted students eventually recovered on their own, with no long-term health effects. Thomas Jakobsson, a school nurse at Bådaskolan in Borås during the outbreak, recalled the strangeness of the event. Students would show up to his office one after another, all complaining of similar symptoms. The school doctor couldn't make sense of it, and many students were referred to orthopedic clinics. Although Bua was the epicenter, other schools and towns began experiencing similar outbreaks, with no clear pattern to explain the spread. One of the earliest known cases, Marlin Kjellberg, recounted how the condition emerged in her own life. She first experienced pain at the age of 11 and was soon hospitalized. Traction was applied in an attempt to treat her hip, but the stay was more curious than frightening for her. Soon after, she was given crutches, and to her surprise, so were many of her classmates. Within weeks, it wasn't just a few individuals affected, it was the majority of her class, and eventually, most of the town. Orthopedic specialists at the time noted some signs of inflammation and initially suspected a viral cause, though tests consistently came back inconclusive. Treatments such as traction, though standard at the time, were later admitted to be ineffective, and in some cases may have exacerbated discomfort. Still, they recovered naturally. In hindsight, medical professionals concluded that there might have been a physical origin for a few early cases, but the majority were likely driven by psychological factors. Christina Berg Kelly, a youth physician, would later propose a theory that framed Błaszczuk as a psychosomatic illness, essentially an outbreak of mass hysteria. She was supported by orthopedic specialist Krista Allenmark, who also acknowledged the psychological component, though he maintained that some cases may have stemmed from a legitimate but short-lived virus. As the number of cases grew, so too did public speculation. Environmental theories were rampant. Some believed emissions from the nearby Varo pulp mill or radiation from the Ringhals nuclear power plant could be the cause. Others proposed even more exotic explanations, such as contamination brought back by Swedes working at the Bai Bang paper mill in Vietnam. None of these theories were supported by any scientific evidence. Local media played a major role in shaping the community's perception of the mystery. Klaus-Göran Sandblom, a journalist with Hallands Nyheter, recalled the atmosphere of concern that gripped the town. There had already been long-standing fears about environmental hazards in the area, especially following the construction of major industrial plants. Sandblom described how people feared that something dangerous might be leaking into the water or air, and the sight of schoolchildren in pain only deepened their anxiety. Yet, in a final twist that baffled both residents and medical professionals, the outbreak simply ended. After dominating local headlines and creating widespread fear, Błaszczuk disappeared as quickly as it had appeared. No new cases emerged after the 5-month period, and those previously afflicted returned to their normal lives, seemingly without consequence. To this day, the true cause of Błaszczuk remains a mystery. The mysterious case of David McAfee. The disappearance of David McAfee remains one of the most troubling and perplexing missing person cases in East Tennessee. At the time of his disappearance, David was 31 years old and living in New Market, a small town in Jefferson County. He was the father of 3 sons and was in a committed relationship, though sources vary on whether his partner was his girlfriend, fiancée, or wife. Regardless of the official label, she played a central role in the timeline leading up to the day David vanished. David was the youngest son in his family, with a younger sister, Kadana, who had recently given birth, a moment David had reportedly been excited about and deeply supportive of. Professionally, David listed himself as self-employed in nearby Jefferson City, located just a short drive from New Market. The exact nature of his work is unclear, but he seemed to maintain a stable lifestyle despite a history of struggling with substances. Whether addiction played any role in his disappearance remains speculative, as there is no confirmed evidence that he was actively using at the time he went missing. David had also recently faced legal trouble. On April 6, 2021, he was convicted of committing a burglary, specifically one categorized as other than habitation, which typically refers to a non-residential structure like a store or business. He was sentenced later that month and was on probation at the time of his disappearance. As of now, his status is listed as absconded. The events of October 28, 2021, unfolded like any other ordinary day until they took a sudden and disturbing turn. David was last seen at 7:15 in the morning, asleep beside his partner at their home off Old Dandridge Pike. Later that day, he was reportedly working on a friend's truck and was seen by a neighbour in the area. By 2:30 in the afternoon, he had gotten a ride to a BP gas station off Asheville Highway, where security footage captured him purchasing cigarettes. His partner returned home around 3:45 in the afternoon, expecting to find him there, but the house was empty. His gaming console, however, was still on. an odd detail that suggested he hadn't planned to be away for long. Despite several unanswered calls, David finally spoke to his partner around 5:30 in the afternoon, claiming he was still working on the truck. At 6:13, he texted a friend, and then, just over an hour later at 7:30, his partner received 3 alarming crash detection alerts from his iPhone. These alerts, a safety feature for detecting car crashes, were immediately concerning. When she contacted the Jefferson County dispatchers, they informed her that no crashes had been reported in the area. Acting quickly, she drove to the crash's reported location, but found no sign of an accident or David. The following day, David's partner reported him missing. Soon after, his phone was located behind the Providence Church in Jefferson City. The device appeared to have been thrown against a wall, possibly triggering the crash detection software. There was also an incomplete attempt to dial 911 from the phone, which never went through. The final GPS ping placed the phone on Walnut Avenue, just a short distance from the church. What makes David's disappearance even more unsettling are the personal items he left behind. He did not have his jacket, wallet, or his second phone with him, nor did he have his hat, something his family said he always wore and rarely parted with. The absence of these items, combined with the unexplained crash alert and abandoned phone, has left his loved ones fearing the worst. To this day, David McAfee remains missing. With no confirmed sightings, no activity on his accounts, and no new leads, the case remains open but stagnant. His family continues to hope for answers and remains desperate to know what happened on that October evening in 2021 when David vanished without a trace. The mystery of Mary Ann Johnson. In the heart of Los Angeles, on a seemingly ordinary winter day in January 1994, 54-year-old Mary Ann Johnson stepped out of the Robinson's May department store where she worked and disappeared without a trace. Known to her colleagues as dependable and professional, Mary Ann was an account representative whose life appeared stable on the surface, but beneath the routine of her daily life, troubling signs were beginning to emerge, signs that would only grow more sinister after her sudden disappearance. For more than 3 decades, the mystery of what happened to Mary Ann Johnson has remained unsolved, leaving investigators grasping at fragments and her loved ones in a painful state of limbo. Mary Ann was last seen on January 19, 1994, at the end of her workday in Los Angeles. According to co-workers, she had mentioned she was planning to meet her estranged husband, Andrew Johnson, the next day. That meeting never happened. Andrew later claimed that there had been no plan to meet and acknowledged only a phone call on the day she vanished. This conflicting account immediately raised suspicions and became one of many puzzling inconsistencies that would frustrate investigators. A significant clue came a week later, on January 26th, when Mary Ann's black 1988 Chevrolet Corvette was discovered in the parking lot of a shuttered restaurant in Van Nuys. The restaurant, Louisiana West, was co-owned by Mary Ann and Andrew, but had recently gone out of business. Oddly, the car keys were found inside the locked restaurant, yet Mary Ann was nowhere to be found. There was no clear explanation for how the keys ended up inside the building while her vehicle remained outside. The discovery only deepened the mystery and left detectives with more questions than answers. At the time of her disappearance, Mary Ann and Andrew were in the midst of a complex relationship. Though separated in 1993, they had not filed for divorce and were reportedly exploring reconciliation. Their shared ownership of a failed business and their uncertain romantic status created a tangled backdrop to an already perplexing case. It was unclear whether Mary Ann's disappearance was connected to personal turmoil, professional hardship, or something more sinister. One of the most alarming elements of the case came to light only after her disappearance. In late December 1993, just weeks before she vanished, Mary Ann had been approached by 3 unidentified men. According to a report filed later by her sister, the men claimed they had been paid $800 to break her legs. Rather than carrying out the attack, they chose to warn her. They refused to name the individual who had hired them, leaving Mary Ann and her family shaken and without answers. This chilling encounter became a central focus of the police investigation and solidified suspicions that Mary Ann had been targeted. Detective Robert Cosley of the LAPD's West Valley Division confirmed the importance of this threat, stating it was a key factor that led authorities to suspect foul play. As days turned into weeks and weeks into months, the case evolved from a standard missing persons file into a probable homicide investigation. By June 1994, authorities publicly acknowledged their belief that Mary Ann may have met with foul play. Her complete lack of contact, combined with the ominous threat she received just weeks earlier, pointed to a darker narrative. Despite intense investigation and public interest at the time, no suspects were ever arrested and no body was found. The case fell into the category of unsolved disappearances, a haunting mystery made all the more painful by the tantalising clues that seemed to lead nowhere. Over the years, detectives and journalists have speculated about possible motives, including financial troubles, romantic entanglements, or hidden enemies tied to her personal life or business ventures. But in the absence of hard evidence, none of these theories have ever moved beyond conjecture. Now, more than 30 years later, the case of Mary Ann Johnson remains a tragic and unresolved chapter in Los Angeles' long history of missing persons. Her name continues to appear in databases dedicated to the vanished, and her face remains frozen in time on digital posters and cold case archives. For her family, the grief of not knowing has never lifted. Every year that passes without a resolution is another year without peace. What happened to Mary Ann Johnson that January evening in 1994 may never be fully known. The trail has gone cold, and the few clues that once seemed promising have faded with time. The mysterious Joshua Ward House image. The Joshua Ward House in Salem, Massachusetts, is no stranger to eerie legends and unsettling tales. Built in 1784, the three-story brick mansion stands as one of Salem's oldest remaining brick homes, rich in architectural significance and layered with a turbulent history. Yet, among the whispers of the past, one particular incident continues to capture the imagination of those intrigued by the supernatural. A mysterious photograph taken in 1981 that many believe reveals the ghostly figure of a witch. That year, the Joshua Ward House had been purchased and converted into office space. During a Christmas celebration, as staff and guests mingled and took Polaroids to commemorate the occasion, one image stood out from the rest. In the developed photo, an inexplicable and haunting figure appeared. It was not someone known to be present at the party, nor did anyone recall seeing anyone dressed in the manner depicted. The figure in the image was terrifying, a woman with dark, sunken eyes, twisted features, and hair cascading wildly around her face. What disturbed viewers most was that the apparition seemed out of place, both in terms of fashion and form, as if she did not belong to this world. Given the location of the photograph, speculation quickly took hold. The Joshua Ward House is situated in a city famously known for the Salem witch trials of 1692, a dark chapter in American history where hysteria led to the persecution and execution of innocent individuals accused of witchcraft. While the house itself was constructed nearly a century later, it sits on land that carries deep historical scars. Before the house was built, the site was associated with George Corwin, the High Sheriff during the witch trials, notorious for his methods, including the pressing of Giles Corey. Corwin lived on the land prior to the construction of the current home and reportedly died in the same location. Some theorists believe that the ghostly image captured on the Polaroid is the lingering spirit of one of the victims of the witch trials, or perhaps an angry energy drawn to the site by the atrocities that occurred nearby. Others propose that the apparition could be a residual haunting, a photographic imprint left by an entity bound to the history of the land. Those who have visited the house since the photograph was taken report strange phenomena: cold spots, disembodied voices, and unexplained shadows. Whether these are rooted in suggestion or in true paranormal activity remains a topic of ongoing debate. The Joshua Ward House has since earned a place among America's most haunted locations, and the photograph continues to circulate among ghost hunters and skeptics alike. While modern photography has evolved and many unexplained images can now be dissected with digital tools, this 1981 Polaroid retains its mystery. No definitive explanation has been provided, and the figure in the photograph remains unidentified. Mysterious funeral image captures a strange guest. Among the many unsettling images circulating the internet, few strike as deep a chord as the mysterious photograph taken of three women following their mother's funeral. What was meant to be a heartfelt keepsake of a difficult day turned into something far more chilling. In the background of the image, behind the trio of grieving daughters, stood an unexplained figure. A tall man, dressed entirely in black, wearing a wide-brimmed hat. The figure had no visible facial features, and his presence was never noticed at the time the photo was taken. Even more unsettling is the placement of his hand on the shoulder of one of the women, who, tragically, lost her life in a car accident just days after the photo was captured. This eerie figure has since become associated with what many refer to as the Hat Man, a shadowy entity reported in numerous cultures across the globe. Witnesses often describe him as a dark silhouette of a man, sometimes with glowing eyes, but always marked by the presence of a long coat or cloak and a hat, often wide-brimmed or resembling a fedora. What sets the Hat Man apart from other shadow figures is the widespread belief that his appearances are more than mere tricks of the light or imagination. His arrival is often linked to ominous feelings, sleep paralysis, and in some accounts, even misfortune. The photo has since sparked deep conversations among those who investigate paranormal phenomena. The timing of the young woman's passing so soon after the picture was taken has led some to believe that the Hat Man in the image was not just a symbolic presence, but an actual harbinger of doom. While skeptics argue that the figure could be a photography artifact, a guest mistakenly captured, or even a digital manipulation, the women who experienced the event insist that there was no man behind them when the picture was taken. The Hat Man is often grouped with a broader category of entities known as shadow people. These figures are typically seen in the periphery of vision, moving silently and quickly across rooms or through hallways. Descriptions consistently emphasize their lack of detail. No facial features, no distinct clothing patterns, only a human-like silhouette cloaked in darkness. What is particularly unnerving about shadow people is their movement. Witnesses frequently report that these beings glide effortlessly, almost as though they are unbound by the physical laws that govern the natural world. In this particular case, the photograph adds a disturbing visual layer to what is usually a fleeting, momentary encounter. The clarity of the image, combined with the tragic events that followed, has cemented its place in modern folklore surrounding shadow entities. Whether interpreted as a supernatural occurrence, a warning, or an unexplained coincidence, the presence of the Hat Man in this funeral day photograph continues to unsettle and provoke reflection. It stands as a haunting reminder that some images capture more than what meets the eye, and that sometimes the veil between the seen and unseen is thinner than we think. Parachute discovered in North Carolina outbuilding may hold the key to solving the 53-year-old D.B. Cooper mystery. More than half a century after the infamous hijacking that captivated the nation, new evidence may have surfaced that could finally crack the enduring mystery of D.B. Cooper. A parachute recently discovered in an outbuilding on a North Carolina property could be the long-sought physical link to the man who, in 1971, jumped from a hijacked commercial jet with $200,000 in ransom money and vanished into legend. The parachute, found by retired pilot and skydiver Dan Grider, is drawing renewed attention to a case that remains the only unsolved hijacking in US aviation history. On November 24, 1971, a man using the alias Dan Cooper boarded a flight from Portland to Seattle, dressed in a business suit and acting calm. Once the plane was airborne, he handed a flight attendant a note claiming he had a bomb in his briefcase. He then demanded $200,000 in cash and 4 parachutes. Upon landing in Seattle, authorities complied with his demands, after which he released the passengers and ordered the crew to fly toward Mexico City. Somewhere between Seattle and Reno, Nevada, the man opened the rear stairway of the aircraft and parachuted into the night sky, never to be seen again. Aside from $5,800 in cash that washed up on the banks of the Columbia River years later, no trace of the man or the money was ever found. The FBI launched an exhaustive investigation, interviewing over 800 suspects, yet no one was conclusively identified as D.B. Cooper. In 2016, the Bureau officially closed the case, citing the lack of any new physical evidence. But that decision may now be revisited. The potential breakthrough came in July 2022, when Dan Grider discovered what he believes is the parachute used in the heist, stored among the possessions of Richard Floyd McCoy's the second late mother. McCoy, a former Army helicopter pilot and skydiving expert, had long been one of the FBI's top suspects in the Cooper case. In April 1972, just 5 months after the Cooper hijacking, McCoy pulled off a remarkably similar skyjacking in Utah, demanding $500,000 before parachuting out of a plane. He was eventually caught and sentenced to prison, where he was later taken out during an escape attempt. Many believe he was the same man behind the Cooper mystery. Grider, who has spent more than 2 decades investigating the case, shared his findings in a detailed 2-part series on his YouTube channel, Probable Cause. He documented the discovery of the parachute, a modified military surplus bailout rig, and traced it to McCoy. Grider calls the rig 1 in a billion due to its rarity and distinct characteristics. The parachute had been carefully stored and maintained, hidden away in a storage building on the McCoy family property for years. McCoy's children, Shante and Richard III, have since come forward, stating they believe their father was indeed D.B. Cooper. For years, the family remained silent, believing their mother Karen may have played a role in the hijackings and not wanting to risk exposing her. Following her death in 2020, they began sharing their story with Grider, who had been reaching out to them for years. While the FBI has not officially reopened the case, the discovery of the parachute and the corroborating details shared by McCoy's children may offer the most compelling lead in decades. Whether this new evidence will finally close the chapter on one of America's most intriguing mysteries remains to be seen. But for the first time in years, there is renewed hope that the true identity of D.B. Cooper may finally be revealed. The Wessex Way Monster. In England, a mysterious creature was caught on a motorway camera. A strange humanoid named variously as the Wessex Way Monster, the Wessex Way Creature, or the Highway Crawler of England, was seen on camera on an English highway sometime around the year 2007. Images in the form of still photos show what looks to be a head that is similar to a human, complete with legs and an upper torso, and it can run on all fours. Curiously, inhabitants in the region claimed that authorities began to investigate after this tape was made public, and further reports of sightings came from people who claimed to have seen a 4-legged monster that bore a striking similarity to a werewolf. After the video was made public, investigations produced little results, but oddly, several people came forward and described how they had seen weird animals prowling the area in the early 2000s. According to the eyewitnesses, the creature resembled a giant hairy humanoid, or werewolf. It could move at extremely high rates and was frequently seen leaving a scene before a good photo could be taken. The creature's rapid speed caused some to speculate that it wasn't natural, pointing out that it might have been a baby deer crossing the road at the time. However, others who took screenshots of the creature claimed that it didn't resemble any of the local wildlife and that it had what appeared to be arms and legs. According to one cop who supposedly came forward and recounted how they had seen strange creatures around the area, the Wessex Way region in Devon is home to numerous unusual species, and locals have been coming forward for years to describe their mysterious experiences. Mrs. Green, one of the eyewitnesses, reported seeing a big, bipedal, canine-like creature with broad shoulders, robust, muscular legs, and a pointed nose that resembled the Wessex Way monster. It was further described as having blazing eyes and sharp teeth, being between 6 and 7 feet long, and appearing to be able to stand on its hind legs. Its fur was either grey, black, or brown. The video is not very clear, but you can clearly see that its hind legs are not like a deer's, and its upper body and shoulders also seem excessively large, indicating that this creature is more humanoid. Those who have seen the footage have suggested that it could be a skinwalker, wendigo, or even a wild man. The Monkey Man of New Delhi. The Monkey Man phenomenon that gripped New Delhi in the summer of 2001 remains one of the most intriguing and bizarre episodes in the city's history. The sudden appearance of a mysterious, monkey-like creature terrorized residents and sparked widespread panic, leading to a series of dramatic encounters between police and the alleged creature. The events that unfolded during this tumultuous period shed light on the complexities of urban folklore, mass hysteria, and the human psyche. An ape-like creature known as the Monkey Man of New Delhi frightened India's capital city of New Delhi. That May, rumours of an odd, nocturnal, monkey-like creature that was attacking people started circulating in New Delhi. Although eyewitness reports were frequently contradictory, they generally described the creature as standing 4 feet tall and having thick black hair, and it was said to have had metal claws, trousers, and bright red eyes that occasionally showed through goggles. It also wore a metal helmet. Some say the monkey man is Bigfoot, while others say it's an embodiment of the Hindu god Hanuman. Many people claim to have been scratched, and in a panic brought on by the monkey man, 2 or 3, depending on certain accounts, even perished when they leaped from building tops or plunged down stairwells. Police eventually even released impressions created by artists in an effort to apprehend the creature. It was said that if one shines a bright light in the monkey man's face, it will dispel his night vision glasses and cause him to flee. Additionally, it was believed that dousing the primate with water would disable his motherboard heart. Likewise, it was thought that the monster might become invisible by simply pressing a single button on his panel. According to these views, the monkey man is more mechanical than natural. 15 individuals sustained injuries on May 13, 2001, varying from scratches and bites to bruises. On May 15th, a pregnant woman fled after hearing neighbors yell that they had seen the monkey man and tumbled down several stairs. Additional reports of sightings surfaced in Kanpur in February 2002 and New Delhi in July 2002, with the latter reporting a contraption like a monkey and glimmering with red and blue lights. An unidentified eyewitness even asserted that the monkey man had stolen his mobile phone. The response from authorities was swift, but initially ineffective. Police received hundreds of distress calls and deployed additional patrols to investigate the reports. As quickly as it had begun, the monkey man phenomenon gradually faded away by midsummer. The number of reported sightings decreased, and public interest shifted to other topics. The lizard man of Scape Ore Swamp. The lizard man of Scape Ore Swamp is a lizard-like humanoid entity described as standing at a height of 7 feet, having been completely green in color and possessing the rough textured skin of a lizard. The primary sightings of the lizard man of Scape Ore Swamp describe the creature as having snake-like scales covering its body from head to toe and 3 large knob-like fingers on each hand. Some of the reported witness sightings claim the creature to have glowing red eyes that appear to illuminate, whereas others have described the creature's eyes as reflective, similar to that of a wild animal. First sighted back in 1988, a series of sightings would persist in the area of Scape Ore Swamp, South Carolina, over the span of several years before efforts by the local military would prevent cryptid researchers from investigating the sightings any further. Back in 1988, a 17-year-old local resident, known as Christopher Davis, claimed that, as he was driving near the location of Scape Ore Swamp, he struck a creature that was described as being green, completely wet, 7 feet tall, had the skin of a lizard, possessed 3 fingers on both hands, had wide, glowing red eyes, and was covered from head to toe in snake-like scales. This creature would later be referred to by locals as the lizard man of the Scape Ore Swamp, and further sightings of the creature would continue for years to come. Though many claimed to have spotted the creature, even occasionally having direct encounters, on the roads located nearby the Scape Ore Swamp, others claimed that they had even encountered the lizard man more than a few miles away from the swamp. This would eventually lead to so many sightings of the creature that a local radio station offered a $1 million reward to anybody that could capture the creature alive and bring it to the radio station. Though many people believed it to be nothing more than a publicity stunt, the seriousness of the creature would later be the focus of the nearby military base, as an airman known as Kenneth Orr, that worked at the nearby Shaw Air Force Base, would go on to file a police report claiming that he had encountered the lizard man located off of Highway 15 and fired at the creature. He believed he had wounded the creature, but couldn't locate its body. Despite the police report and the proof of a number of scales being found at the location, Kenneth Orr was arrested for claims of an unlawful carry of a weapon and attempting to file false police reports. This has led many to believe that though the military may be actively hunting and looking for the creature, they are also working to cover up the existence of the lizard men to prevent mass panic. Although the two creatures don't share a lot of the same physical characteristics, many cryptid researchers have often compared the reports surrounding the Thetis Lake monster sightings with that of the lizard man of Scape Ore Swamp. Similar to the lizard man, The Thetis Lake monster is a reported lizard-man-like entity, but a large protruding horn rising from the top of his head. Additionally, the two creatures made their appearances roughly around the same time, back in the mid-1970s. Although far smaller and more frog-like in design, the Thetis Lake monster also appears to inhabit an underwater ecosystem. Unlike the lizard man, rather than running from confrontation, the Thetis Lake monster is remarkably aggressive and has attacked several eyewitnesses over the years. According to a report made by the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, on the 19th of August in 1972, 2 eyewitnesses would report a lizard man encounter out on Thetis Lake, located near Cottonwood, British Columbia, only a few miles from the Cadborough Bay off Victoria and Vancouver Island. According to the 2 eyewitnesses, 2 boys by the name of Gordon Pike and Robin Llewellyn, the 2 claimed to have seen a 5-foot-tall creature suddenly emerge from the surface of Thetis Lake and chase them onto the shore of the beach. As the creature got close to Robin Llewellyn, the being was believed to have lowered its head and cut Robin on the hand using 6 razor-sharp points that were located on the cranium of the lizard-man-like creature. Once injured, the boys would run further away from the beach as they would watch the impossible-to-explain creature slowly return back to the waters and disappear deep into the lake. Shortly after the encounter, the 2 boys would call the local authorities, and a Royal Canadian Mounted Police officer would arrive at the beach to investigate the claims further. Oddly enough, rather than dismissing the sighting as nothing more than a prank, the officer would document the attack in detail and make special mention of the real wound received by one of the eyewitnesses. The officer would later state that the boys seemed sincere, and until they determine otherwise, they have no alternative but to continue their investigation. 4 days following the initial sightings, on the next Wednesday afternoon, on the 23rd of August, the Thetis Lake monster would be reported once again by independent eyewitnesses who claimed to have seen the lizard-man creature by the shores of the lake. According to the eyewitnesses, 2 men by the name of Mike Gold and Russell Van Nice, the 2 claimed that while they were at the shores of Thetis Lake, in the recreation area commonly visited by tourists, they noticed a peculiar disturbance in the water across the lake at around 3:30 in the afternoon. The 2 men claimed that as they watched the disturbance in the water, they initially thought that the source could have been a man struggling to swim as the creature would make it to the shore after seemingly being stuck underneath the surface of the water for an exceptionally long period of time. Once on the shore, the 2 eyewitnesses described the creature as appearing to have had the body of a human being, covered entirely in scales, with the head and face of a monster. Atop the head of the creature was believed to be a razor-sharp horn, or point, with large sharp ears jutting off of the side of the creature's skull. Although it was difficult to accurately see, the men believed that the creature was entirely silver in color, though admit that the color could have been caused by a reflection of the afternoon light on the smooth surface of the wet scale. One of the eyewitnesses, Mike Gold, would later provide a statement to the Royal Canadian Mounted Police on the incident, saying that the mysterious creature came out of the water and looked around. He described the creature as shaped like an ordinary body, like a human being's body, but it had a monster face, and it was all scaly, a point sticking out of its head and great big ears. Although these 2 sightings would be the only known detailed reports surrounding the strange creature, rumors surrounding the Thetis Lake claim that man-sized serpent-like creatures are often spotted in the area surrounding the lake and in the nearby bay. Legends of a monster referred to as the Cadborosaurus, nicknamed the Caddy, are claimed almost every year in the British Columbian coast, known as the Cadborough Bay, located only a few miles from the Thetis Lake. Although the serpent creature of Cadborough, referred to as the Caddy, is often described by eyewitnesses as being similar in design to the Loch Ness Monster, continued sightings of frog-like and lizard-like humanoids have been made all throughout the surrounding region of the Cadborough Bay. Additionally, during certain months of the year, Thetis Lake directly connects with Cadborough Bay, draining out into the nearby shoreline, allowing a brief moment of connection between the 2 bodies of water. New Jersey Gator Man connection. Researchers often compare the original sightings of the lizard man of Scape or Swamp sightings, reported out of the state of South Carolina, to many of the matching details of the New Jersey Alligator Man, such as the alligator-like appearance of the creature and its reported likeness of standing upright on its hind feet or its behavior of running away when confronted or spotted by a human being, as well as its height and its body, both of which are covered from head to toe in scales. This has led many cryptid researchers into believing that the cryptid responsible for the New Jersey Gator Man reports is also responsible for the Lizard Man of Scape or Swamp reports of South Carolina. During the summers of the early 1970s, a series of reports would be made by independent eyewitnesses around the southern tip of New Jersey, claiming to see what eyewitnesses would describe as a humanoid-shaped alligator man swimming near the shores of the Newton-Lafayette area. Known as the New Jersey Gator Man, according to the hundreds of residents over the course of 5 years, reported between 1973 to 1978, the man-like alligator would be seen swimming in the water, diving down and staying submerged for long periods of time and leaving the water, walking on the shore on its 2 hind legs, similar to that of a man. During the first year of the creature's appearance, back in 1973, a reporter would investigate the sightings of several eyewitnesses who claimed to have been walking by the shores of the Newton-Lafayette area when they noticed what they originally believed was a flailing man in the water. Calling out to the man out of fear that he could have been drowning, the creature would come closer to the shores, only to be revealed as a scaled humanoid creature estimated to have been around 6 feet tall and possessing the head of an alligator. Although the local authorities were uninterested in the reports, the journalist would publish his story in a local newspaper, giving the creature its iconic name and comparing its existence to an ancient Native American story in the region. According to the Lenni Lenape Native American tribe, an ancient legend of a man-sized fish roaming near the shores of the New Jersey area described a similar creature believed to have been a scaled monster. The legend would claim that though the fish was far larger than any known natural species and easy to spot in the water, its size made it impossible to catch and proved to be far too dangerous to ever try to hunt, with the cunning nature of the creature being far more terrifying than its size. It is believed that the New Jersey Gator Man sightings are similar to the ancient Lenni Lenape legends. The reports of the New Jersey Gator Man would reach their climax by the summer of 1977, when a scientific researcher would provide an interview with the local newspaper confirming the existence of a gator man-like creature living near the New Jersey coastline. According to the reports, a New York State conservation naturalist by the name of Alfred Hulstruck would claim that a creature described as a scaled, man-like creature that appears from deep within the waters exists near the state's southern tier. Alfred Hulstruck would also claim that the primary reason for the creature's appearance was due to man-made ecological disasters in the region. Although the cause was unknown, Hulstruck believed that the red algal blooms caused by many of the questionable practices of the state and local businesses were the primary reason for the creature's sudden appearance, as it was believed that the region the creature most frequented were the algae-ridden waters. Interestingly enough, immediately following the statement by the New York State conservation naturalist, the story of the New Jersey Gator Man would go completely silent, with many cryptid theorists believing that a secret government ban on the topic was enforced. Additionally, it appears that any evidence of the articles were claimed to have been scrubbed from first-hand reports, with mentions to the articles coming only from second-hand accounts. Oddly enough, it has proven rather difficult, or next to impossible, to prove the validity of the story of the original newspaper reports back in 1973, as the only sources of the legends of the New Jersey Gator Man make reference to an unnamed journalist and unknown local newspaper that claimed to have authored the article on the New Jersey Gator Man. Several facts surrounding the second-hand accounts are verifiable, however, such as the claims of algal blooms near the southern coastal waters of the New Jersey coastline. Even more interesting, matching the direct claims from the New York State conservation naturalist, growing concerns surrounding chronic red-ride blooms are being investigated by the United States government, with fears that the tides have been causing deeper water species to surface or be relocated due to oxygen deprivation. It could be that the surfacing of the humanoid alligator-like creature could have been caused by the sudden oxygen deprivation in the waters caused by the red algal tides, directly matching the claims of Alfred Hulstruck. When researching the history of the pre-colonial period of the New Jersey area, then known as Nova Caesarea, researcher George Dudding found similar stories of what were referred to as a dragon in the river that ran throughout the area of modern-day New Jersey, recorded by local Native American tribes. According to Dudding, the Native American tribes that had resided around the New Jersey region prior to European settlement had inhabited the region for more than 13 years, predating the creation of modern civilization by more than 2,000 years. It was after the end of the last ice age that the tribal group known as the Lenni-Lenape Native Americans had begun to occupy the area of the modern-day Lower Hudson River Valley and the Delaware River Valley. Although the exact timeline of their expansion is unknown, it is believed that over the next few thousand years, the group would reach out and settle in areas much further eastward, closer to the Atlantic Ocean, in the area now referred to as the state of New Jersey. It was sometime around the mid-1600s when the first early European settlers would make contact with the Lenape Native Americans, referring to them as the Indian Delaware tribe. It was during this initial contact that many of the Native Americans warned the early European settlers to not build around the Delaware River, referring to the area as the Poquessing, a term that translates to mean the cursed place of the river dragon. Not believing the story and instead assuming that the legends were mere fabrications created to convince the settlers to live in areas much further away from the Native American territories, many of the European settlers decided to set up their colonies surrounding the Delaware River, given its ease of access for trade, transportation, and fishing. Oddly enough, it appears that the legends told to the settlers by the Native Americans were founded in some form of truth, as many of the early European settlers would tell strange stories of dragons spotted in the rivers, by the rivers, and near the surrounding woods throughout the region. Once the Swedish explorers arrived in the region, the name of the Delaware River was referred to as Drake Kill, a combination of two Swedish words that translates to mean the Dragon River. Today, creeks and tributaries surrounding the Delaware River hold names like Poquessing Creek or Drake Kylan, which translate to reference dragons or man-sized reptiles spotted in the creeks and rivers in those areas. Loveland Frogman. Commonly referred to as the Loveland Frogman or the Ohio Frogman, this creature appears to be a small humanoid creature akin to a frog standing up on hind legs and standing at a height of 3 to 4 feet tall. The frogman is commonly sighted around the state of Ohio and tends to be seen near waterways, rivers, lakes, or ponds. According to eyewitness descriptions of the creature, the Loveland Frogman has a large head compared to its small body size, with large bulging eyes that almost appear to be popping out of their head, similar to that of a frog. Their mouths are typically described as being exceptionally wide, with large razor-sharp teeth that are sometimes seen when the creature opens its mouth. The skin of the creature is commonly described as being greenish or greyish in colour and holds a texture similar to that of tanned leather. In many of the frogman sightings, the creature has been reported as huddling together in groups while holding a glowing, sparkling wand that has been compared to a 4th of July hand sparkler. The 1955 Robert Honeycutt sighting. Back in the early spring of 1955, a 19-year-old man by the name of Robert Honeycutt claimed to have encountered a small humanoid creature while traveling through Clermont County. According to the eyewitness report, the event occurred sometime between March and May when Robert Honeycutt was driving down an isolated road that resides alongside the Little Miami River. At around 3 to 4 in the morning, as Honeycutt reached the Madeira Loveland Pike, he crossed a bridge leading across the Little Miami River into Loveland and noticed what he later described as 3 upright two-legged humanoid creatures standing along the side of the road, huddled together in a triangular pattern, fidgeting awkwardly. Due to the high strangeness of the event, Robert Honeycutt slowed his vehicle to a stop and looked at the creatures more closely. According to Honeycutt, he had stared at the creatures for approximately 3 whole minutes, during which time the humanoid beings made no violent movements or quick reactions to Honeycutt's presence. At one point during the event, however, one of the creatures turned to Honeycutt's direction and made a gesture that Honeycutt interpreted as telling him to stay back or keep moving on. Despite this, the entire experience appeared to have been too mundane for Robert, given the sight of the strange creatures that he would later describing as appearing to have been human-like in their appearance, except for the fact that they appeared to have had green skin and large frog-like heads, standing at an estimated height of about 3 to 4 feet. The most dramatic part of their appearance, however, was that they appeared to have been completely bare, with frog-like bodies featuring large mouths, large eyes, and a complete lack of hair. Although it is uncertain how Robert Honeycutt could accurately have gotten a smell from the creatures, he claimed that when he rolled down the window of his car, he could smell what he described as almonds and fresh alfalfa emanating from the creatures. Before he left the area, he remarked that the creatures appeared to have had webbed hands and feet and were holding up what he described as a wand or chain that was giving off blue sparks that appeared similar to those 4th of July firework sparkler wands. Unsure of what to do, and now becoming increasingly scared of the strange creatures, Robert Honeycutt drove off and went straight to the local police station in Loveland, Ohio, and told them about what he had encountered. Believing that perhaps Honeycutt was under the influence, they made him perform a field sobriety test, which he passed with flying colours. It was at this moment, though, that Honeycutt learned that several hours had disappeared when questioned if he knew what time it was, and realised that he was suffering from a strange sensation of time loss. Confused as to Honeycutt's behaviour and mental state, the officers told Robert to head home and then sent officers to investigate the bridge. Although the details surrounding the bridge investigation are somewhat conflicting, it is believed that the Loveland Police Department found nothing remarkable at the bridge, but still decided to leave an officer to watch the bridge and the roadways through the night. Some ufologists and cryptid experts believe that Robert Honeycutt's sighting relates more closely with typical UFO and extraterrestrial encounters, as time-loss events are very common for alien encounters. It is typically reported that when individuals encounter these mysterious beings, they will have memory gaps or blocks of the event to prevent the event from affecting them, and will often only remember their encounter after repeated sessions of memory recall. Given the strange sparkling wand of the creatures, ufologists believe that the creatures possessed a handheld form of advanced technology more akin to our modern-day smartphones. Due to the fact that this account was recorded back in the early 1950s, such technology would not have been within Honeycutt's mind. The next morning, a more thorough investigation was put into the report, with law enforcement performing a background check into the character of Robert Honeycutt. After a few inquiries, it was deemed that Honeycutt was a reliable witness, as he was a member of the Loveland Civil Defense, an emergency preparedness organization focused on prepping civilians in the event of a nuclear attack during the Cold War. Although it is impossible to confirm, it is believed that the investigation was taken over by the United States Federal Bureau of Investigation before being closed and dismissed as a false report or animal misidentification. The 1955 Mangone frogman sighting. 2 months following the Robert Honeycutt frogman sighting, another sighting would take place in the summer of 1955 around the same area. According to a witness referred to as Emily Mangone, she and her husband claimed to have been awakened in the night by barking dogs. Worried that the dogs could have been attacked by a wild animal, the couple got up and looked out the window into the backyard, where the dogs had been sleeping. It was at this moment that the couple noticed what they described as a 3-foot-tall, humanoid-shaped creature standing in their backyard, seemingly covered with leaves and mud. Curious and slightly frightened by whatever was standing in their backyard, the couple quickly turned on their back porch light to get a better view of the creature, causing the humanoid to quickly run back into the nearby woods and hide there. After watching for several more minutes, the couple believed that maybe they had misidentified a wild animal standing up on its hind legs, and so turned off the back porch light to get ready to go back to sleep. After turning off the light, they watched as the strange creature returned into their backyard, causing their dogs to begin barking again. Fearing that the creature was some kind of impossible-to-explain threat, the couple quickly called the Loveland Police Department and reported a strange man or creature was standing in their backyard harassing their dogs. Although the police department would respond to the call as quickly as possible, after several more minutes, the creature disappeared and was never seen by the couple again. The Stockton, Georgia sighting. Back on the 3rd of July, during that same year in 1955, another strange Loveland frogman sighting would take place in the state of Georgia. The oddest part of the encounter is that though the sighting would take place a few states away, the eyewitness to the event was a resident from Loveland, Ohio, traveling down south to Florida. According to a report told by a Mrs. Margaret Simmons, she and her husband were driving from Cincinnati, Ohio, all the way to Florida for a vacation getaway they had planned a few months prior. At around 3:30 in the morning, while passing through Stockton, Georgia, The couple claimed to have seen a group of 4 small humanoid creatures huddled in the middle of the road, preventing them from driving forward and forcing them to a stop in the middle of the lane. According to Margaret Simmons, the 4 entities appeared to stand at a height of 3 to 4 feet tall and were completely grey in skin tone. The most peculiar aspect of these strange creatures, however, were that they appeared to have had frog-like appearances, with one of the creatures holding what appeared to have been a glowing stick in his hand. After swerving to avoid the creatures, stopping and then immediately driving off, Margaret Simmons noticed her husband had been asleep during the encounter, and so woke him up to tell him about what she saw. Curious as to the encounter, the husband attempted to convince his wife to turn around so he could see what the creatures looked like, but Margaret was too terrified to turn back around and investigate further. After a few more minutes, the couple then noticed that several hours had passed without them realizing it, experiencing a form of unexplainable time loss after the encounter. The Ray Shockey encounter. A similar encounter would take place roughly 17 years later in Loveland, Ohio. According to an officer's report, the event would take place on the 3rd of March back in 1972, when an officer by the name of Ray Shockey would have a strange encounter with frog-like humanoid entities at around 1 in the morning. As Ray Shockey was driving down Riverside Road toward the small town of Loveland, he was making a slow turn into town on an icy road when he noticed what he described as a small humanoid creature lying at the side of the road at the intersection of Twightwee Road. Originally believing that the creature was a dog lying down in the snow, the officer slowed down to check on the animal to see if it was okay when he realized that the creature was not a dog. Suddenly, the creature rose out of the ground and stood up on 2 feet and appeared to have been some humanoid animal impossible to identify. The officer estimated that the creature most likely stood at about 4 feet tall and weighed between 50 to 75 pounds at most. Its body lacked any type of hair or fur and was instead covered in a bumpy, leathery skin that would fold or be smooth in different areas. The most bizarre features that the animal had, however, was its strange head that appeared to be a mix of a frog or lizard face with legs that appeared to be longer than its arms. Once the officer made direct contact with the creature, the frog-like entity jumped up onto the car, then ran towards the guardrail that wrapped around the road and jumped off the ledge, running into the nearby woods and waterways, passing over the embankment and disappearing in the Miami River. Frightened by the sighting, Officer Ray Shockey immediately drove to the Loveland police station and reported the encounter to fellow police officer Mark Matthews. After describing his encounter in detail, Mark Matthews refused to believe the encounter and so drove back to the site of the encounter with Ray Shockey to find further evidence of the event. Once the 2 officers returned, tracks leading down into the embankment because apparent and strange scratch marks located on the guardrail led Matthews to believe that a large animal must have damaged the rail sometime earlier in the day. Oddly enough, less than 14 days following this incident, Officer Mark Matthews himself would have his own encounter with the Loveland Frogman. According to a report made by Officer Matthews, on the 17th of March back in 1972, Mark Matthews was driving along a road leading out of Loveland, Ohio, when he spotted what he originally believed was an animal that had passed away lying on the side of the road. Fearing that the body could cause an accident, Officer Matthews pulled over to the side of the road and got out of his vehicle in the hopes of dragging the carcass out from the middle of the road and onto the road berm. Once Matthews stepped out of his car, however, the creature immediately stood up and stared at the officer intently. According to Matthews, the creature appeared exactly like how Officer Ray Shockey had described his encounter, standing roughly 4 feet tall, with leathery skin and the head of a frog. The only additional difference that Mark Matthews noticed was that the creature appeared to have had a long leather tail similar to a lizard's. As the 2 stared at each other, the creature made a sudden move towards the officer, scaring him into pulling out his pistol and firing at the entity. Although the officer fired several rounds, either the officer missed each shot or the bullets had no effect on the animal as it ran away and leapt over a guardrail, disappearing into the nearby waterways. Matthews would later describe in his report that he believed someone had hit the animal prior to the encounter, given the fact that it appeared to have moved with a lift and was found in the middle of the road incapacitated when he first spotted it. Unfortunately for both officers, Ray Shockey and Mark Matthews, Their official police reports of spotting the strange Loveland frogman would end up causing a great deal of ridicule on their part, affecting their careers and public images for the rest of their lives. Despite the many interviews insisting that the creature appeared to be a 4-foot-tall, humanoid frog-like entity, with drawings of the creature confirmed by both officers, the officers would later change their stories to avoid ridicule and claim that they had witnessed nothing more than a pet iguana that must have escaped captivity. It is uncertain whether or not the officers changed their story to avoid ridicule or due to outside forces requiring their cooperation in a cover-up of the events. The Loveland farmer sighting. During the same month as the Loveland Police Department sightings, a farmer claimed to have directly encountered 4 frog-like or lizard-like humanoid creatures wandering through his farm that resided adjacent to the Little Miami River in Loveland, Ohio. Although the dates surrounding the incident are not specific, the farmer recalled that the event happened sometime in March of 1972 and believed that the creatures were some undiscovered native species to the area, given how they walked around the farm and near the open waterways. According to the farmer, the creatures stood at about 3 to 4 feet in height, had greenish-grey skin with large bulging eyes that almost appeared as if they were popping out of their heads. The farmer also described that the creatures had large mouths that appeared to be filled with rows of razor-sharp teeth. As the farmer attempted to approach the creatures, he watched as they ran off into the Little Miami River and disappeared into the nearby waterways, submerging into the water and vanishing from sight. Later, during that same month, the farmer would claim to have seen the creatures once more standing around the river embankments as he was riding his bicycle into town. Due to having seen the creatures multiple times near the river, he assumed that the creatures must have been a native large amphibious species of alligator or lizard of some kind. Milton Lizard Monster, Milton, Kentucky. According to the original Milton Monster Lizard report, roughly 100 miles away from the small town of Loveland, Ohio, where sightings of frogmen had occurred shortly before, a sighting of a giant lizard-like creature was made in the state of Kentucky near the small town of Milton in Trimble County. According to the eyewitness report, the co-manager of the Bluegrass Body Shop vehicle repair business, a man by the name of Clarence Cable, claimed to have come into direct contact with a giant lizard-like creature hiding behind one of the wrecked vehicles in the Milton junkyard. Cable described the strange lizard creature as having huge bulging eyes like that of a frog, with an elongated leathery-skinned body that stretched to be more than 15 feet in length. According to Clarence Cable, the creature's skin appeared to have been an off-white color, covered from head to toe in thin black and white stripes that appeared to have been covered in speckles, estimated to have been about the size of a quarter. Running back inside the shop to grab his gun, Cable quickly got out of the area where the lizard was hissing and returned with his rifle ready to defend himself. Unfortunately, by the time he returned, the creature had already disappeared and no traces of its existence could be found. Shortly after the event, Clarence would go on to tell his brother about what he saw, describing the creature as being nothing short of an overgrown monster, but the brother thought that maybe Clarence was playing a prank on him and so refused to believe that the creature was real. A few days later, however, Clarence's brother would have a direct encounter with the creature himself. On the 27th of July, 1975, Garrett Cable claimed to have come across a large lizard monster that crawled out from underneath a wrecked automobile that fit his brother's description, appearing to hiss at him, revealing a forked tongue. After several attempts were made by the creature to attack Garrett, the man soon realized that his brother's encounter was not an over-exaggeration. Scared for his life, Garrett ran inside the body shop and warned his brother that the creature returned, causing the two brothers to quickly arm up and return to the area with their rifles. Once they returned, the creature was nowhere to be found and appeared to have abandoned the area for the time being, similar to the previous encounter. It was at around this time that the two brothers would begin spreading the story of their strange encounter with locals, causing the local news outlets to pick up the story for their papers. 2 days later, Clarence Cable would spot the large lizard-like creature once more within the Milton junkyard. This time, Clarence was ready with his rifle and attempted to scare the creature away once and for all. In order to get the creature to come out more into the open, Clarence began throwing rocks at the large lizard, striking it several times on the head. Oddly enough, rather than crawling out from underneath one of the wrecked vehicles. The lizard stood up on two legs after being pelted by the rocks and started running away into the nearby forest. Believing that this creature was a humanoid monster of unbelievable proportions, Clarence opened fire on the beast as it ran towards the nearby woods, but realized the bullets had no effect on the creature. After reporting the third sighting to a local news outlet, the creature was known locally as the Milton monster, or the Milton lizard, and nearby hunters attempted to track down and hunt the beast, fearing that it might attack a person if left to itself. On the 7th of August of that year, the local news would publish an article in the Trimble County Banner titled, "Monster Still Sought." Unfortunately, the creature was never seen or located again. Interestingly enough, many of the townsfolk accepted that the creature was real, given the fact that local town legend dating back as early as the 1800s reported an encounter with a creature fitting the same description as those reported by the Cable brothers. Whether the legend is true or not is unknown, but according to some old documents recorded sometime during the 1800s, there exists a legend near the area of Milton that claims a large lizard of about 14 to 16 feet visited the area and attacked a group of children. According to the legend, two boys who lived nearby in the small town decided to go fishing in the nearby river in the summer in order to catch some fish for dinner to take home to their parents. As they were hanging around the embankment of the river, splashing each other and playing in the water while fishing, one of the boys noticed what appeared to have been a large log floating nearby. Believing that the log was nothing more than an old tree that had gotten swept by the river, the kids paid no attention to the floating entity until it came too close for them to get away. In one short moment, the floating log seemed to become a large reptile creature that attempted to swallow one of the boys and hold him in its mouth to carry him away down the river. Hearing the screams, passing adults quickly ran down into the river and began fighting with the large reptile, forcing the animal to release the boy from its mouth and bringing the children out of the river to safety. Rather than be deterred, however, the creature went underwater and traveled to a nearby tree that was described as being an estimated 26 feet in circumference and hid underneath the tree to attack any passerbyers. Fearing that the creature would attack again, several men started to cut down the tree to get to the animal before anyone else could get hurt. But once the tree was cut down, the large reptile emerged from the tree and was reported as running away on 2 feet, standing at a massive 14 to 15 feet in height as it traveled down into the river and disappeared into the nearby woods. The Green-Clawed Beast Encounter. According to a report made near Evansville, Indiana, roughly 200 miles from the Loveland Frogman sightings, another similar-looking creature was spotted by two women who were swimming together out in the nearby river. According to a woman by the name of Mrs. Naomi Johnson and her friend Mrs. Louise Lamble, the pair had been swimming together in the Ohio River near Godtown, Indiana. Planned as a little summer getaway, Mrs. Johnson brought along her 3 children and planned on having a fun afternoon in the river to help cool off. As she and Louise journeyed further out into the middle of the river at a distance of roughly 15 feet, Mrs. Johnson claimed to have seen some strange humanoid shape swimming in the water beneath her. A few seconds later, Mrs. Johnson was pulled underwater by what she described as a webbed hand and believed that the creature was a strange frog-like humanoid person that appeared to look similar to the creature from the Black Lagoon. Underwater for over a minute, Mrs. Johnson continued kicking at the creature to get away and luckily got loose from its grip as Louise Lamble swam over and attempted to scare away the creature. Immediately, the 2 women and the children got out of the river and claimed they got a good look at the creature in the river, describing it as a green monster covered fin scales with claw-like hands that had 3 fingers on each hand. Several days following the incident, the women came forward about their story and told local news outlets about what they had encountered, supported by the witness testimony of themselves and the children. Shortly thereafter, a man who identified himself as a United States Air Force member claimed that the incident was an issue of national security and must not be spoken about to anyone else. Unfortunately for the strange man in black-type character, the news outlets already began running the story, and the encounter would gain local fame and become known as the Green-Clawed Beast. Navajo Rangers report mysterious encounters. In Navajo Nation parks, it is the duty of a Navajo Park Ranger to safeguard and conserve the natural and cultural treasures. A Navajo Park Ranger's specialized tasks may include patrolling and keeping an eye on park areas to guarantee the security of guests, park assets, and animals. Offer interpretive services, such as teaching guests about the history, natural resources, and cultural aspects of the park. Upkeep and repairs should be made to all park amenities, such as campgrounds, picnic spots, and pathways. It's interesting to note that authorities in the Navajo Reservation in the American Southwest have reported seeing unusual things in recent years. Although many officers choose not to discuss their experiences, some have come out in recent years to relate some of the mysteries and legendary stories associated with this place. Situated southeast of Ballard, Utah, this site has gained notoriety in recent years as a portal to another dimension, replete with unexplainable events and paranormal experiences. The Skinwalker Ranch moniker was bestowed to the property because of the overwhelming volume of strange encounters that have occurred there in recent years. It's interesting to note that farmers and landowners have come forward with accounts of encountering creatures that seem to be able to defy all logic, causing them to be driven from their homes out of fear that something might happen to them. It's said that the entire area surrounding Utah and the Navajo Nation has been home to these mysterious creatures. One of the problems is that the cops sometimes face ridicule when they report these kinds of incidents. The Navajo Nation police, on the other hand, have a different perspective and take these sightings and encounters seriously. They will make an effort to investigate and comprehend each report, noting that witnesses are certain that they are witnessing something strange. The officers also assert that legends have a deep historical connection to the area and should be taken seriously. The Navajo Nation Police Department has stated that each person's interaction would be handled seriously and that they encourage people to come forward with their encounters. According to a Navajo ranger, there have been reports of unusual dog-like animals seen all throughout the region. They have been observed to run at very high speeds and resemble humanoids with dogs in appearance. Speaking candidly about some of the experiences they've had while on the job, a Navajo ranger mentioned that he once saw something running beside his car while traveling through Crown Point. He claimed that, suspecting it was an injured animal, he had slowed down to get a better look at what it was. But he soon noticed he was traveling at 30 miles per hour, and he saw this thing could keep up with him. The ranger claimed that he saw what appeared to be a gigantic dog in his rearview mirror and that it ran to the passenger side, bumping the car. He moved to the right at this point to get a closer look at it, and all he could say was that it resembled a gigantic wolf. He then said that after pulling to the side and applying a strong brake, the monster ran in front of his car. At that moment, he turned on the full headlights to get a closer look at it. The ranger calculated that the creature must have measured about 6 feet in length once it was illuminated by the headlights. The ranger concluded his account by stating that the creature was just inside the full beams for a few seconds before darting out of sight. He claims that he had no idea what this thing was even now, but if he were to characterize it, it would resemble a cross between a man and a wolf. Numerous in-depth eyewitness reports from around the United States recount persistent tales of incomprehensible humanoid canine-like beings known as skinwalkers, who exhibit skills that set them apart from other supernatural beings on Earth. While some accounts characterize encounters as terrible attacks, others depict almost otherworldly beginnings. The skinwalker, a humanoid dog-like creature described as standing over 7 feet tall, has been linked to legends dating back thousands of years. It is said to have the face of a wolf, the antlers of a deer, 2 jointed legs, and large claws on each hand. Stories of the skinwalker have been found all over North America. All Native American tribes have similar stories about the skinwalker and its activities, despite their varied religious backgrounds and worldviews. Most of the knowledge about skinwalkers comes from ancient Navajo stories. The Navajo tribe believed that when a member of the tribe committed a social or unforgivable offense, the other tribe members would gather and start a ceremony of cursing the offending individual before permanently expelling them from the group. All by themselves and cursed, it was thought that the exiled tribal members would turn into humanoid dog-like monsters whenever their ravenous appetites started to take over. A hiker finds hundreds of trees flattened overnight in a quiet woodland in England. In a quiet woodland near Medan in Devon, UK, a man named Ben Landricum had an experience that left him shaken, confused and curious. On an otherwise ordinary day, while walking his dog through the woods, Landricum stumbled upon something strange and unnerving, a long column of flattened trees stretching across the woodland floor. The scene was unnatural, as if a great force had passed through the forest, knocking down everything in its path. Instinctively disturbed by what he saw, Landricum rushed back to his campervan with his dog, leaving behind a mystery that would soon spark rumours and theories suggesting that an unidentified flying object had crashed in the area. Ben Landricum was an experienced outdoorsman who frequently explored the woods around Medan with his loyal dog. However, this particular walk in the Devon woods would be unlike any he had experienced before. On this day, while following a familiar trail, he noticed something odd in the distance. A long, straight line of trees had been snapped and flattened, as if hit by an unseen force. The devastation was concentrated in a narrow path, cutting through the forest like a scar. The fallen trees were not toppled randomly, as they might have been in a natural event like a storm or strong wind. Instead, they appeared to be pressed down in a uniform direction, as though something large and heavy had crashed through the woods. Despite the area being prone to storms, this scene was unlike anything Landricum had ever seen in the region. Startled by the sight, he immediately felt a sense of unease. He wasn't sure what had caused the destruction, but the thought of lingering in such an unusual area didn't sit well with him. Word of Landricum's discovery quickly spread among locals and online communities, particularly those interested in paranormal phenomena. The strange nature of the flattened trees, combined with the lack of a clear explanation, led to widespread speculation. One of the most popular theories to emerge was that an unidentified flying object had crashed in the woodland, creating the path of destruction. Devon, like many other rural areas, has a history of UFO sightings and unexplained phenomena. The isolated forests, expansive skies, and quiet atmosphere have long made the region a hotspot for mysterious occurrences. As news of the discovery spread, enthusiasts and theorists began piecing together stories of other strange events in the area. Some locals reported hearing unusual noises or seeing strange lights in the sky on the night before Landricum found the column of flattened trees, further fueling the idea that a UFO might have crashed or passed through the area. These suggestions weren't entirely far-fetched. There have been numerous cases globally where mysterious flattened trees or scorched earth have been linked to alleged UFO sightings. In the case of Medan, the strange destruction of trees bore some similarities to other reports of unexplained crashes, leading many to believe that something unusual, whether extraterrestrial or not, had occurred in this quiet Devonshire woodland. Theories of a UFO crash persisted, and several enthusiasts visited the site to search for evidence. Some claimed to have found signs of radiation or magnetic anomalies in the area, though these findings were never scientifically verified. Others speculated that the crash site might have been quickly covered up, with officials eager to dismiss the possibility of extraterrestrial involvement. For those who believe in the UFO phenomena, the idea that a UFO might have crashed in the Devonshire woods is both exciting and chilling. While the truth behind the mysterious column of flattened trees remains elusive, one thing is certain. The experience has left a lasting impression on Ben Landricum and those who have followed his story. Whether the result of a freak weather event, an unknown terrestrial force, or something far stranger, the woodland near Medan now holds a new sense of intrigue, drawing curious minds to uncover the secrets hidden within its trees. The Green-Clawed Beast Incident. A mysterious creature referred to as the Green-Clawed Beast is purported to inhabit the Ohio River. The event occurred on August 21, 1955 in Evansville, Indiana. Mrs. Johnson was swimming when the alarming incident transpired. She asserted that a hairy, clawed hand had seized her around the knee. On the shore, her acquaintance observed in horror as Mrs. Johnson flailed in the water. She fought fervently to free herself from the creature's hold. She lunged for an inner tube to escape the beast and ultimately reached the shore. Mrs. Johnson sustained numerous injuries to her leg, which thereafter began to throb and swell. Certain stories indicate that she exhibited an unusual green mark on her skin resembling a palm, which remained impervious to removal for several days following the incident. Subsequently, she expressed gratitude that it was she who was in the water, rather than her 13-year-old son. She expressed concern that her son might not have escaped from the formidable creature. She recounted her narrative publicly solely to save others from undergoing a similar experience. The mystery of the faceless figure of Dead Man's Curve. Dead Man's Curve, a notoriously dangerous stretch of road in Ohio, has been a source of fear, tragedy, and mystery for decades. Though the road was redesigned and reconstructed in 1969 to improve safety, its reputation as a perilous place remains, largely due to the accident that occurred just a month after the road's reopening and the dark legend that followed. On October 19, 1969, 5 teenagers were killed when their 1968 Chevy Impala was struck by another vehicle traveling at over 100 miles per hour. The sole survivor of the crash, Rick, lived to tell a chilling story, one that still haunts the region to this day. He claims to have encountered a faceless figure on multiple occasions, a dark spirit said to haunt the site of the fatal accident. For years, Dead Man's Curve had been a source of fear and frustration for drivers in the area. This sharp bend in the road had been responsible for numerous crashes, many of them fatal, earning its grim nickname. The accident shocked the local community, and once again, Dead Man's Curve seemed to live up to its deadly reputation, even though the curve itself had been straightened. The only survivor was a man named Rick, who had been in the back seat of the Impala at the time of the crash. Although he suffered severe injuries, Rick managed to survive. However, his life was forever altered, not just by the physical and emotional trauma of the accident, but by the chilling experiences he would come to endure in the years that followed. Following the accident, reports of strange occurrences began to emerge from the site of the crash. Drivers passing through the area late at night claimed to see a mysterious figure standing near the side of the road. The figure, described as a man wearing dark, tattered clothing, appeared to be hitchhiking, but something about him was deeply unsettling. Those who saw him noted that he had no face. His features were either completely obscured or simply missing, as if a dark, blank void had replaced what should have been a human visage. The faceless figure became a local legend, with many speculating that it was the spirit of one of the victims of the crash, doomed to wander the site of the tragedy for eternity. Some suggested that the figure might be the embodiment of the dangerous road itself, a spirit created by the long history of accidents associated with Dead Man's Curve. Regardless of the theory, one thing was clear. The intersection had not lost its aura of danger, and the faceless hitchhiker became a feared and infamous presence on that stretch of road. For Rick, the lone survivor of the 1969 crash, the faceless figure became more than just a local legend. It was a terrifying reality. Over the years, Rick has claimed to have seen the faceless hitchhiker 5 times, each encounter leaving him shaken and disturbed. His first sighting occurred not long after the accident, as he was driving through the area late one night. He described seeing the dark figure standing on the shoulder of the road, his arm outstretched as if asking for a ride. At first, Rick didn't notice anything unusual about the figure, but as he got closer, he realized the man had no face. Overwhelmed with fear, he sped away, but the image stayed with him for days. The second encounter occurred a few years later, under similar circumstances. Rick was once again driving near the site of the crash when he saw the same faceless figure. By the time of his 5th encounter, Rick could no longer dismiss the figure as a trick of the mind or a product of his trauma. He was convinced that the faceless hitchhiker was somehow tied to the tragedy of the crash and perhaps even to the deaths of his friends. Rick speculated that the spirit might be one of the teenagers, lost and searching for peace, or even a dark force that fed off the grief and fear surrounding Dead Man's Curve. To this day, the legend of the faceless figure at Dead Man's Curve persists, with many drivers claiming to have seen the mysterious hitchhiker.